So I'd like to welcome everybody today to this webinar. I'm Sharon Fisher, President of Soroptimist International, and I'm so happy that we're all traveling together on the road to equality. We're learning about those women and girls who have been left behind, often due to gender-based violence. Today, our webinar is a bit different from the other ones. We've invited our federations to join us and share the topics of the road to equality and what's happening in their federations in local clubs. It's an important year this year with the 75th anniversary of the UN. However, it's also the 25th anniversary of Beijing with the Beijing Platform for Action. So our speakers today are from each federation, but moderating, we have our lead rep in New York, Bette Levy, with us today. Bette has been a Soroptimist for over 17 years and has been representing Soroptimist International at the United Nations headquarters in New York since 2011. Currently, she's the main rep, but she also serves as special advisor to myself for strategic planning and relationships. There's nobody that knows more, well, there might be, but we don't know them, that knows more about who's who at the UN. So it's a valuable relationship. Navigating that UN structure is not for the faint of heart. So she's extremely helpful to me in that regard. She's actively engaged in the NGO and civil society community at the UN headquarters, including the Women's Major Group, the Committee on Aging, the Committee on Social Development, the Working Group on Girls, the NGO UNICEF, and the Working Group to End Homelessness. She's a coordination partner of the UN 2020 campaign and was recently co-chair of UNIDOP 2020. She's the former vice chair of NGO CSW New York and co-chair of the NGO CSW Forum and treasurer of NGO CSOC-D, which is the Commission on Social Development. Prior to retiring, she worked in management for the New York State Office of Mental Health for almost 40 years. She's a psychologist, which I didn't know. That's why she figures me out so easily. And her primary expertise is in children's and families and residential care. On 9/11, she was appointed as the lead for disaster risk reduction and for 10 years served as the liaison to the New York City Office of Emergency Management, the New York State Emergency Management Office, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. She served as consultant to the U.S. Department of Justice Fraud Division and the U.S. Health and Human Services Children's Mental Health. That's a long bio, but that's the kind of experience that we enjoy with our UN representatives. So, Bette, the floor is yours and welcome.
Thanks, Sharon, for inviting me to moderate today. And it's my honor to share this platform today with the federations. It's my role today to try to help you all understand how your local projects actually interconnect with the global policy work that we, the UN reps, do. And I'm going to give you a different way to look at the work you're doing. And as Sharon mentioned, 2020 has been a major year for the UN with the 75th anniversary, but it's also the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And while I'm not going to go into details about BAMFA, as it is called, that could take several webinars itself. I am going to focus on the 12 critical concerns of the platform of action. And I want you to know, you can move, Sue, I'm sorry, to the next thing. I want you to note when we are looking at these critical concerns, that while they are called the 12 critical concerns, they're not numbered. They are that's the alphabet, A through L. And you will hear quite often at the UN reference to L, which is the girl child, because this was the first time in 1995 when the Beijing platform was created that girls were actually identified as needing to be addressed separately. And I want to say, I don't know if she's on the call because I stopped checking, but our very own Jackie Shapiro, one of the UN reps here in New York, was one of those people way back in '95 who were pushing for the issues. And she's been a leader among everything for girls' rights. So the Beijing Platform for Action still remains 25 years later the most comprehensive and global policy framework for gender equality. And you're often going to hear people who reference it as the Women's Bill of Rights. And it's quite sad, though, that over the last few years, there's been a lot of pushback and regression, and not one country so far has fully met the objectives. And I wanted to put it into a historic perspective that in 1995, it was also the 50th anniversary of the UN. And so this was a major progressive time at the UN when a lot of different programs such as BAMFA were able to be produced. This was actually the outcome document of the Fourth World Conference for Women that was held in Beijing in September of '95. But it's important to note that in March of 1995, there was the World Summit for Social Development, and they produced a document called the Copenhagen Declaration on Social Development. You usually just hear it called Copenhagen Declaration. And they had 10 commitments, and one that's of significance to SI is Commitment 5. We commit ourselves to promote full respect for human dignity and to achieving equality and equity between women and men, and to recognizing and enhancing the participation and the leadership roles of women in political, civil, economic, social, and cultural life and development. It was that commitment that opened the door to BAMFA being able to happen. Next slide, Sue. So I want you to listen to the presentations that are going to follow me with a different set of different set of hearing tools and a different set of eyes. I want you to look at them through the 12 critical concerns of BAMFA. So we start with A, women in poverty. So when women are poor, they're not protected and they face double discrimination, gender and economic. B, education and training. Education, we all know, is essential to achieve gender equality. It also, though, improves economies, improves health, nutrition, and education of their family. Next slide. Women in health. To reach full potential, women need to be healthy. That includes nutrition, sexual, reproductive rights, and mental health. D, violence against women. 2/3 of the countries that have put laws on the books to stop domestic violence, but there are major gaps in that. So we still lack access to essential services, and this still remains one of the #1 issues for women around the world. Next slide. E, women and armed conflict. Wars and armed conflict destroy families and societies and leave women and girls particularly vulnerable. F, women and economy. Whether in businesses, on farms, as entrepreneurs, employees, unpaid domestic care work, women make enormous contributions to the global economy, the local economy, their family's economy. Next page. Women, G, women in power and decision making. Women make a difference, but we're very underrepresented. H, institutional mechanisms for advancement of women. Important part of informing laws, policies, and programs and advancing gender equality. Next slide. Human rights of women. Women and girls are entitled to full and equal enjoyment of all their human rights. And the promotion of human rights is first responsibility of governments, and it's the core work of the UN. J, women and media. The media plays a significant role in perpetuating and challenging social norms that condone discrimination or violence against women. Next slide. K, women and the environment. Women are among the most affected by climate change. They are often the ones gathering the water, fishing, farming, and land that's affected by flooding. L, a girl child. As I already mentioned, this was the first time that it was ever produced in a UN document that girls needed to be addressed separately. Okay. So now I'd like to start the presentations of the federations, and it's my pleasure to introduce Nisha Ghosh, who is the Director of PR and Marketing for SIGBI. Nisha, take it away.
Violence against women knows no borders and is the most widespread violation of human rights affecting women and girls of all races, all cultures, and ages. Next. It's a historical thing. This is sexual, physical, psychological abuse across lines of income, class, culture. Add to this the intersectionality of color, race, ethnicity, economic disparity perpetuated by individuals, families, communities, and often by the state. Systemic injustice and social inequality occur on a multidimensional basis. At the end of the abused is always a woman, and the abuser, the other gender. Next slide. Preconceived ideas whereby females and males are arbitrarily assigned characteristics and roles determined and limited by their gender. They are often used to justify and maintain the historical relations of power of men over women. Next slide. Discrimination and abuse against women and girls are pervasive and long-running phenomena that characterize Indian society at every level. Gender roles are ingrained from a very early age so that girls socialize to be meek and take subservient roles in family and society. This process of internalizing the inferior role expectations has seen changes with the advancement of education and general prosperity, but attitudinal change takes a long time and requires firm, sustained handling. In 2012, a horrific gang rape of a young girl on a bus in New Delhi shook the nation and galvanized candlelight marches, protests, sit-downs, strikes. The girl died, and that added to the anger and upheaval that the women's group demanding death for the rapists. He was named Nirbhaya, which in Hindi means the fearless. What could we do? On a wet, cold December of 2012, we stood in the marketplace with our banners, troubled and feeling powerless. Pune Metro East was then only 2 years old, and we had just begun our work, but we felt determined to act. Next slide. After 2 months, Eve Ensler launched a movement, 1 Billion Rising, when she asked women and girls to come out to the streets to dance in protest for violence against women. Inspired by this, we thought of 1 billion rise, not rising. 1 billion people in India. What if they could all rise against abuse? And no, we did not dance. We plotted, we planned, and Project 1 Billion Rise took shape. But first, we felt the need to understand how to address abuse against women. The professional counselor took sessions with our members and made us see discrimination with a focused lens. At the club, more brainstorming issues explored, presentations were made and remade, but one thing we all agreed upon was that it was discrimination against girls that was the root cause. We agreed unanimously that it was the younger generation that needs to be addressed before their opinions hardened. So, to start with the young as early as possible, we evolved 3 modules for different age groups. Schools and colleges were contacted and safe touch posters printed. We talked to principals and parents. Trained members went out and delivered safe touch as directed to the younger children. Adolescence was a tough subject. We faced shy, awkward students who would ask us questions later privately. Some schools asked for the boys and girls to be addressed separately. At some, the teachers sat through the sessions. Talking of bodily changes in the classroom was a new thing for the young students and the teachers. Education in India prepares children for academics, exam competitions, but life skill education is sadly lacking. Besides, culturally, gender, sex, physical change is not something discussed at home. Understanding Gender module addressed an audience of older children. A member designed a special poster which we distributed at locations. Here, we are addressing the Army Medical Girl Cadets. Older students had pertinent questions. Some spoke when we spoke to them of gender. Educators, parents, media are socializing agents who pass on the gender stereotype. So that parents and teachers and others were on the same page, we addressed them too. The take-home message, listen to your child. At a corporate office, members addressed the employees on gender stereotypes and violence and harassment at workplace. We underlined how gender inequality had adverse impact on development goals and reduced economic growth. When governments will promote a visible and active policy of mainstreaming a gender perspective, when institutional mechanisms and gender practices are in place, when gender insensitive laws are changed, when conviction rates become visible, when then will abuse of women and girls be stalled. Meanwhile, 35 women from this club, Pune Metro East, continue to sensitize the community about gender perceptions. We know it's a slow ride to that 1 billion number, but we will get there, and then 1 billion women and girls will dance in the streets without the fear of abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha, for showing us how thinking through a project, including educating your own members, can bring about so many changes. And while I was listening to that, I identified the following of the 12 concerns: B, education and training of women; C, women and health; D, violence against women; G, women in power and decision making; H, institutional mechanisms; I, human rights of women; J, women and the media; and L, the girl child. So that's wonderful to see how much you've been able to bring together through that project. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Penny back. Penny, Penny is the current president of Soroptimist International of the Americas, my federation. So welcome, Penny, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Penny Babb, the president of Soroptimist International of the Americas. Today, I am sharing with you the impact of SIA's Live Your Dream Awards and how they support survivors of gender-based violence. I'd like to tell you about NATALIA. NATALIA's start in life was difficult. Her mother was addicted to drugs. She and her mother and brother moved from place to place, eventually moving from the United States to Mexico. Throughout the turmoil, NATALIA managed to stay hopeful. But when she was 11 years old, NATALIA was kidnapped and became the victim of sex trafficking. Her mother never tried to find her. After suffering more than 2 years of sexual abuse and beatings, she managed to escape her kidnappers. NATALIA's troubles didn't end there. She began to lose hope as she was alone without family. Now with a son, she was forced into prostitution and drugged by the local mafia, but fought hard for the sake of her child. Her son, who she promised never to abandon, became the force that drove her to find an escape and travel back to the United States. Despite these traumas, NATALIA has determination and grit. NATALIA went back to school in the United States to continue her education, starting with her high school diploma. Hardships in her youth never diminished her dream to get the education she deserves and to create a better life for she and her son. Unfortunately, stories like NATALIA's are not uncommon. Research points to 3 main things women and girls need to prevent or recover from gender-based violence. First, they need social support, including coordinated, quality resources and resource services, availability of safe spaces and shelters, high-quality friendships, role models, and mentors, and a connection to the community, such as a faith community or support group. They also need economic stability, meaning steady employment and the ability to learn a livable wage. Finally, women and girls need education. Academic achievement and the completion of secondary school is important to success, as is access to skilled training. Education is one of the key factors for both overcoming violence and preventing it from occurring. SIA's Live Your Dream Awards help women to access education, leading to economic empowerment in our 20 countries and territories. Our cornerstone dream program is the Live Your Dream Awards. These education awards provide funds for women who are primary financial providers for their families. Every year, Soroptimist distributes more than $2.8 million in cash awards to about 1,700 women all over the world. Over half of our Live Your Dream Award recipients are survivors of domestic violence, trafficking, or sexual assault. Our Live Your Dream Awards are unique because recipients can use the cash award to offset any costs associated with their efforts to attain higher education, such as books, childcare, tuition, or transportation. By entrusting our recipients to use the funds however they see fit, we are empowering them to make choices for themselves and their families that will improve their standard of living. In fact, of Live Your Dream Award recipients surveyed from 3 years ago, 87% completed their education and improved their standard of living. And of the women who are survivors of gender-based violence, 97% now report living in a safe environment. Remember NATALIA? Her story could have ended the day she was kidnapped. But because of who she is and the love and strength she has for her son, she persevered. She got her General Education Development or GED certificate and then enrolled in a community college where she found out about the Live Your Dream Awards. She successfully navigated school, work, and raising her son, and was rewarded for her efforts by receiving $19,000 through the Live Your Dream Award to support her continued educational goals. NATALIA says, the Live Your Dream Award has helped me by helping me with school and my car. Without my car, I wouldn't be able to make it to school. So with that award, I was able to fix my car, buy books for summer, and buy my son clothing. It is very helpful. The impact of this program contributes to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The Live Your Dream Awards and SIA's program for teen girls called Dream It Be It are together called our Dream Programs, which directly support at least 5 Sustainable Development Goals. Goal number 1, end poverty in all its form everywhere. Goal 4, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Goal number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Goal 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. And goal 10, reduce inequality within and among countries. By educating and economically empowering women and girls, we can improve not just their lives, but the outcome of their communities and nations. Since the implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SIA has been at the forefront of providing needed funds for women and girls to pursue their education. In fact, since January 2016, SIA has provided access to education for over 7,000 women, invested $12 million in their education, and Soroptimist International of the Americas has provided over 73,000 girls with the education and resources they need to reach their education and career goals through our Dream It Be It project. Our DREAM programs have proven outcomes for women and girls, and from our research, we know that there are 20 million women and girls who are eligible and could benefit from our DREAM programs. We are eager to scale our work to serve more women and girls. To celebrate our 100th anniversary in 2021, we have designed a bold goal for our first decade of our second century: to invest in the dreams of 500,000 women and girls through access to education. Because we are continuing our focus on education with our DREAM programs, we can help to prevent violence against women through Dream It Be It, while also empowering women who have been affected by violence through the Live Your Dream Awards. Thank you. It has been an honor to present the impact of our DREAM programs on behalf of the SIA membership.
Thank you, Penny, for sharing these successful programs and the incredible, impressive number of women and girls you've been able to reach through those programs. And my listening, I heard of the 12 concerns: A, women and poverty; B, education and training; D, violence against women; F, women and economy; and L, the girl child. So not only have you worked on the SDGs, you've also worked on the Platform for Action. So thank you. And next, it's my pleasure to introduce ANUSHA. I know I'm going to mess it up. It's been such a long time since I've had to say your name, so apologies in advance. But it's my pleasure to introduce ANUSHA SANTHIRASTHIPAM. I know I messed it up. Who is currently the Interim Federation Program Director for SISWP, and she is the immediate past president. ANUSHA, the floor is yours.
Namaste all. I come to you from Calgary, Canada, where I've been here long enough to actually produce a baby, which is 9 months. So on that note, I just had to say that. So on that note, we at the Southwest Pacific are very, very honored and humbled at the same time to share with you this really, really deeply heartfelt project from the deep rural heartlands of Australia. You know, this project in a way is to honor the original founders of the land that we live in, our natives, our indigenous people, and to recognize how much more we need to do for these very, very remote communities. So this is a project that has great potential for replication, not just throughout Australia, but throughout all our other remote South Pacific island nations, and even as far away as Mongolia, in the rural heartlands, in Cambodia, Thailand, and the remote Indonesian islands. So let me take you on this journey just for a few minutes to very, very remote rural area in Western Australia, where this project began as a nascent dream and has now materialized into a methodology that hits so many sustainable development goals, and also Bette will then check off the list of how many we can tick the boxes on Bette's list. So let's move in and take a closer look, shall we? Next slide. So Yiyili Aboriginal Community School is just one of many community schools you find in remote locations for students from kindergarten to year 10 of high school. And what we thought was so essential, and which is what I also saw in SI America, Penny Bett's presentation, was the need to have community engagement, to have education of the girl child, and to ensure that we get buy-in from all stakeholders. And the Guniandi country people are so remote and so in need of well-being and training that this community was a good place to start our test bed. Next slide. So look at where they are. And look, this is just one slice of Australia, Western Australia. You have Perth down there, the big epicenter, commercial center. And Yiyili people are really up there. Now you go to Ayers Rock and all these beautiful, beautiful lands, and you're mesmerized by the sheer natural beauty of Australia. But you know what? It also hides an underbelly of sexual violence, child prostitution, modern day slavery of the girl child. And this is the underbelly I'm going to share with you. Next slide. So to nip it in the bud, when Theresa Lyford was outgoing president of the Southwest Pacific Federation, she had advised clubs to work together because a lot of our clubs are isolated. They're all over, scattered all over Southwest Pacific and even in Australia. And so it started out with Joondalup and Brighton and Southern districts getting together to teach hospitality skills to the Aboriginal school in 2017. Now, move along. So in a nutshell, we felt that it was important to engage with the local communities because you will get resistance from the village elders, from parents, because a lot of children after school end up being child labor. They end up doing all sorts of things on farms, and they are basically lost to the system. Now, you are also aware that many, many decades of native children or Aboriginal children are lost children. We don't even know where they are. They've disappeared through the cracks. So the vision of the school was to encourage a community sense of enterprise development and to deliver mainstream education, but yet at the same time, not lose their cultural identity, their values, their traditional sense of belonging. So we work through 14 independent schools, which are non-religious, and this has been the template for the rest of the schools in the province. Next. So this is what we meet in the projects. You will see there's no poverty, goal number 1 of ending poverty, goal number 3 of good health and well-being, goal number 4 quality education, 5 gender equality, and which is actually focusing on the girl child, 6 clean water and sanitation because they respect the use of water on their lands, and goal 7 affordable and clean energy because you have to use energy in all the programs that they do. Next. So the project targets the age group that is most likely to succeed, and that is the mothers. Because in all our indigenous communities, if you want to break the cycle of violence, if you want to stop the girl child from having disrupted education and leaving the schooling system to become a child bride or to become a modern day slave or to be trafficked into the sex industry, it begins with the mother. If we can convince the mother, she will convince the elders in the society, in the local community, and the girl child will be saved. We felt it was important to encourage a spirit of enterprise because then they have pride, they're independent, they have economic freedom, and they are empowered. And the older students and mothers are mentors. So there's a continual sort of train the trainer mechanism here. And the Soroptimists really are the coaches and mentors. And we are able to diversify and spread throughout the geography of Australia and improve overall literacy. Next. So this is the heart of the system, moving from bush to belly. What does that mean? Really concentrating on the food and health sector, particularly creating employment for these young ones in the food and beverage industry, in the tourism and hospitality sector, from coffee making to healthcare to catering to kids cooking. Next. So they're taught hygiene, which is really important, hygiene, nutrition. They learn more than just recipes. They become creative, they become innovative. They learn how to have good values, good hygiene, safety standards. And, it is great because they meet the high standards of the hospitality and food and beverage sector, which means that the people who are usually left behind and marginalized in these very remote communities will be able to gain employment in a vibrant sector. Not just in Australia, but if it's replicated throughout our Pacific countries where tourism is a key revenue earner, these young ones have economic empowerment potential. The mothers learn how to handle food in a healthy and safe way and create healthy recipes to combine ingredients of the bush. So this is the key here. The secret recipes of the indigenous native people are integrated into their nutrition, health, and food program. This is so unique. This is what makes it so interesting. And so this is integrated into the local hospitality and tourism menu. And this provides business skills so they are independent operators, the mothers and the young ones after they finish high school. Next slide. So this basically is young girls who become baristas. They're kids who learn about nutrition. They take part in market fairs. They go out into food sector exhibitions. They are in the process of being taught. Some of these hidden benefits are we build their confidence, their self-esteem. We improve their communication skills because if you're working in the hospitality sector, you need to be confident, communicate well, you need to have a public personality. It really transforms their whole personalities and outlook on life, and it helps them to integrate with mainstream society rather than being left disenfranchised and marginalized and remain as victims in their rural locations. Next slide. These are all the children, so proud. In their own way, they feel they are Master Chef Australia. You know, you go and touch, you just talk to them. They are so happy. They understand the value of food. A lot of them thought junk food, the junk food that we know are junk food, was the best, most tasty, most interesting food they'd ever come across. A lot of them were actually drug pushers, drug mules. They were addicted to cigarettes and smoke stuff at a young age, which is very, very sad. And you know, they now understand the value of healthy diet, healthy living, and they're so proud to be able to create recipes. The children are creating recipes out of their mother's original formula. Isn't that fantastic? Now, move along. Let's move along. So here we have it, testimonies from so many people, just a snapshot. Now what we see is they got national accredited food handling courses. So they have got official accreditation, official recognition. Therefore, they feel valued. These kids who probably were ignored, beaten into submission, treated as lesser mortals, you know, have got a sense of identity, a sense of belonging. They know that they matter. They know that Soroptimists take them seriously, that the Soroptimists value them. And today, this program, I have to talk to these Soroptimists throughout Australia and in Fiji, where the current president, Suman, comes from. And we are going to take this, you know, when you have a recipe that works for you, we can replicate, can't we? And this is what we want to do. We want to take this to the remotest locations throughout Southwest Pacific and make this an integral part of curriculum. One of the greatest advantages of this project is that we actually keep them back in school after they finish schooling, during that time in the afternoon when they are most vulnerable, because a lot of their parents are working in agriculture or working out, you know, like the fathers may be truck drivers or something, or fishermen, and no one knows what's happening to the children. They are street kids, or they could be raped, they could be kidnapped and taken away to be married to elderly farmers who are divorced, or you know, that's a typical thing. A lot of 12-year-old little ones are being married to 70+ elderly farmers. So this is the ugly underbelly. And today we turned that around and created a miracle called Bush to Belly. So ladies, this is something we can do throughout our entire world. It doesn't stop with Southwest Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, ANUSHA, for that inspiring presentation. And two takeaways that I thought was really important to note was, number one, the importance of looking at the rural communities and the most remote, and not just focusing, you know, on the more urban or suburban communities. Also, as I was listening to you, I picked up how you listen to the needs of the people. You didn't come in and determine, this is what we're going to do and you're going to like it. So I think that's really good. And now here's your report card of ticks off, as you said in the beginning. A, women in poverty. B, education and training of women. C, women in health. F, women and the economy. G, women in power and decision-making. H, institutional mechanisms. And that's a little bit different because you went to the faith-based and the more traditional, you know, as opposed to the set government, but I think you touch on that. K, women and the environment, and L, the girl child. So again, thank you for that wonderful presentation and very inspiring project. And I'd like to move on now to introduce Rita NOGUEIRA Ramos from SIE. She's the Vice President in charge of advocacy. Rita, the floor is yours.
I want to start by congratulating the previous presenters, Nisha, Gosh, Penny, Bob, and ANUSHA SANTHIRASTHIPAM, for the wonderful and comprehensive presentations they have just done. Also, thank you, Sharon, and all the SI team for allowing me to present for the European Federation. So I would like to start by telling you that before COVID-19, the next slide, before COVID-19, the new normal, before the new normal, the interest of Soroptimist Europe for the issue of violence against women and girls already existed. And whether this crime is physical or psychological, domestic or intimate partner violence, cyber violence, sexual harassment or stalking, rape, genital mutilation or forced marriage, trafficking or any other, it is unexcusable and must be stopped. I'm sure we are in agreement about that. The terrible pandemic women and girls are suffering so much, according to the UN Women Last infographic, points nearly 250 million girls, and this is too much, isn't it? So we have been taking charge of this problematic, and we have conducted projects for some years now, which contribute to raising a global voice and protecting the victims, as well as doing advocacy. 5,123 projects, which worth approximately 7,500,000 euros, were implemented last year by Soroptimist in Europe. A considerable part regarding violence, which in fact is one of the biennium strategic focus, SDG 5. So let us move to the next slide, which is SIE projects. Very well. So regarding projects, just to give you a few examples of European projects on violence against women and girls, in France, Club d'Agents worked with the Delegate for Women's Rights and Equality to provide women with over 241 alarm-connected bracelets, which have an app giving a sign in case of danger of violence. This is very useful. Soroptimists in Iceland have been producing several professional videos where they interview different women explaining how they were able to break the silence and walk out of violence. I would be glad to share these links with SI for any of you to watch them. The Union of Norway conducted a performance with well-known Norwegian actresses about human trafficking based on meticulous research where they interviewed the police, rescue systems and victims, and then they mixed them with hard facts for the performance. In Germany, the Soroptimists have been conducting education of vulnerable young people about forced prostitution. In Turkey, Soroptimists ran a very impacting awareness campaign to sensitize the public about violence through the social media, shooting a very interesting short film. In Sweden, Soroptimists are working on a Restart Union project to support women in shelters. About shelters specifically, despite being essential services outlined by the Istanbul Convention, a lot needs to be done, as you know, in Europe and across the world, because NGOs are many times left alone, and they have to operate and respond to the demands. So they struggle without proper resourcing. So Soroptimists in Europe have initiated long ago the management of shelters, such as in Germany, the Donaustadt Club, providing training for professionals dealing with the process of women when leaving the shelters. In the northern part of Portugal, and I have been very glad to see this shelter in particular being described in a SI report. Porto de Abrigo is totally ran by Soroptimists on a daily basis for years. They proudly even wear a Soroptimist logo on their gowns every day. This shelter has welcomed and granted all the inherent services to 148 women and 179 children. It's a great work. They give training, they give specialized psychological support. Also in Italy, Soroptimists were extremely proactive in addressing the problems faced under COVID lockdown. And they created an online social and psychological support line so they can do it regularly. Moving to the slide 4. Thank you very much. So our understanding is that violence or gender-based violence is a violation of human rights in the form of discrimination against women. We are all in agreement about this, I'm sure. And approaching once more the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, already starting next week on Wednesday, marking the beginning of a 16-day period of activism, we have legitimate concerns. In particular, we see now, after the first lockdown, how fragile protection mechanisms are. I wonder if all of us should have the same lockdown. I wonder if lockdown should be different according to the evaluation of risk for some women and for some children. So, as you know, Europe population as per Worldmeter today is over 747 million and corresponds to 9.78% of the total world population. The median age is 42.5 years, and 74.5% of the population is urban, lives in the cities. So the projects of SIE have been and should continue to respond to the characteristics and challenges that are global, but always acting local. Let's move to the next slide, please. So what is our challenge? We all are more or less aware that violence against women is entrenched in our cultures and societies, and it needs to be confronted and combated. Soroptimists develop a very important role in changing attitudes and stereotypes. For example, we need to understand why the prevalence of domestic violence is still much higher in some countries compared to others, in relation to the European and global average, and why in some cultures it is a difficult undertaking, no matter what we do. So, moving to the next slides, from now to the end of the slides on the activism campaign. Last year, Soroptimist Europe started a federation campaign aligned with the UN calendar of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Our aim is that every club could align with it, could prepare it, and could easily execute it, and that each other's ideas could inspire more and more members on this topic, leveraging and benefiting victims and contributing to real change. And the result, I think, was really amazing. You can move the slides from now on because they are showing how the campaign was developed. So the result was amazing and really boosted our members in an incredible way, as I said, and mainly through the platform of advocacy. The start of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence was planned, was prepared in advance, so that the international campaign would galvanize action. And so graphic rules were issued, and our recently appointed advocacy coordinators in each union or country had a prominent role in conceiving a plan and transmitting it to their union and program teams. During these 16 days, our members across Europe mobilized their efforts, and they brought a lot of awareness. Posters and banners were put in local areas with high traffic. You can move onwards. So posters and banners were put in local areas, as you see, with high traffic. Leaflets were distributed. There were meetings with decision makers, and messages were sent through social media. Public orange furniture and various art pieces were conceived and put in public gardens or in front of public buildings, such as in the Netherlands, Germany, Romania, and so on. In Israel, Soroptimists or Orthodox men wore orange too. That's wonderful. Hundreds of buildings, monuments, bridges, stadiums, and statues were lit in orange, and Soroptimists were standing aside them to talk to anyone walking about the importance of this very emblematic date and why it exists such conceived action. So President Anna, I must say, supported as always this action totally. She signed a letter to be delivered to all the embassies across Europe, asking ambassadors to join our Orange campaign. Ambassadors received and met Soroptimists. They heard our major concerns. They met us, and this gave visibility and credibility to our joint action. So because of this joint action this year, we are receiving back numerous contacts, namely from the embassies, saying that they are willing to participate once again in our project. And I think this gives us a lot of confidence to continue to work together. Many creative materials holding the orange image, as you see, were put, conferences, flash mobs, demonstrations, and our Orange Ladies poster, which appears as in my back at this precise moment, with the messages "Stop violence" or "Say no to violence." So moving to the next slide. And the next one. So you can see how impressive it was, the demonstrations and the interviews and newspapers release. So I'm going to talk to you about now about the lockdown. Due to COVID-19 in March 2020, we have seen how fragile public aid and protection measures are in relation to violence. Before the pandemic, women were already suffering disproportionately, and but now this negative trend is coming from 71 to 100 million persons facing extreme poverty, which has a very serious impact on the increase of violence against women. And also on children. This is a reality that Soroptimists might wonder if they don't want to work and target. There is an impact of school closures, not only in learning, but on violence and in cyber violence, which we already know. So with the deprivation of liberty that all of us experienced, victims are in even more danger, and they are held prisoners of their own aggressors behind doors. So we need to defend the international instruments that are binding governments to work this problematic once and for all. There is low perception and support from police authorities and protection professionals. Sometimes victims are treated not as victims, and that is a real concern. So Soroptimists in Europe realized this importance and launched a message through social media to prepare escape plan samples and emergency lines and helplines. You can see in this slide the poster that we spread. You can move to the next slide. So our understanding is that it is vital that professionals and all those dealing with violence are accurately prepared, and this includes decision makers, doctors, policemen, civil society. They all need to receive constant updated training in order to be able to perform a work that is fair and just achieves the results that we want to achieve. And most of all, everyone needs to be prepared to manage emergencies on a much different scale. I needn't say why. There was a change of scenario, and we need to adapt to understand and to incorporate the key concepts of violence and how to work with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita, for showing us how much you can accomplish if we work together, and the effectiveness of a public awareness campaign. And looking at this through the 12 concerns, I saw B, education and training, C, women in health, D, violence against women, G, women in power and decision making, H, institutional mechanisms, J, women and media, H, I, human rights of women, and L, the girl child. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is really a hard act for me to follow. Sue, if you can bring up my next slide, thanks. But we're going to go back to global policy and UN processes. The 2020 Agenda for Sustainable Development, known throughout the world as the 2030 Agenda, and its Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, were adopted in 2015, and they provide an additional framework for action to support gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. The 2030 Agenda reaffirms the vision of the platform of action by both prioritizing gender equality and a standalone goal and recognizing it as cross-cutting, essential to the achievement of other goals. I have made a chart for all 17 goals, but I'm just highlighting here gender to show you how the intersection. So I guess these PowerPoints are available at a later date on the website, and you'll be able to go in. But before I go into a little bit of detail about the intersection, I did want to come back to the Road to Equality President's Appeal, because the primary focus of this appeal was to educate as many of us, our members, as possible to understanding the barriers that make it difficult to achieve gender equality and finding solutions once we have the knowledge. The projects in this presidential appeal are really to reinforce the learning that we hope you're all getting by attending these webinars and passing this information on. Also, the importance of strategic partnering with local community partners that we heard in all these presentations, with the media, with local governments, with faith-based government partners. And we hope by developing public awareness regarding issues and human rights, helping to inform clubs so issues can be addressed in the projects they develop. The areas selected by President Sharon are interconnected with the SDGs and BAMFA 12 critical concerns. And we've heard highlighted in all of the presentations before us, all those things that Sharon hoped to achieve through this project that you've all joined on so wonderfully with. I'm not going to go into details on this. You can show the next slide. It's just reinforcing the last 6 of them. But I did want to make just a few more comments, and then I'll pass the floor back to Sharon. In the UN's report, 25 years after Beijing, Funsili Manabo Nkuka, the Undersecretary General and the Executive Director of UN Women, is quoted as saying, "Today, in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, hard-won progress on gender equality and women's rights is increasingly precarious and has been reversed, especially for marginalized groups of women and girls who face intersecting forms of discrimination. Gender equality must be the center of concerted efforts to build back better in response to the COVID-19 pandemic across every sphere, from health to economy, security to social protection. The impacts of COVID-19 are exacerbated for women and girls. So I leave you with that to show you how important the work that we do at the very most local level up through the work at the UN. Sharon, the floor is back to you.
Thank you, Betty. So the theme today has been Stronger Together and is about uniting our global voice. So thank you so much to our presenters for sharing the work from your federations and how it aligns with our global voice that we all work together on. Betty, thank you as a UN rep and a friend for connecting the dots on the importance of working together and how it influences policy through our global voice at the 7 UN locations where we're represented. And of course, that voice goes beyond those walls back into our local communities. This truly shines a light on local to global and the importance of all of your local work. Let's continue on the road to equality in crossing federation boundaries to learn from each other. Next week is November 25th, and we recognize the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women. And it starts the 16 days of activism that Rita alluded to. And that finishes on December 10th, Human Rights Day, another day that we celebrate or at least honor in Soroptimist International with great respect and enthusiasm. That's also the day of our next webinar. And the good news for people like Chris Knight, who got up at 4 in the morning, is we're going to try and do 2 time zones on this one. The topic is going to be about how your work impacts the global picture again, but we want you to understand how things work within our work at the UN, from our general consultative status to what the UN reps do, to some of the precarious wording in statements. I see Judy Dixon has joined us, so she'll be very familiar with that and how words are not always what they seem to be. So we feel that that's another step in our education of working together. So I hope you will join me. Please, on December 10th, well, any day of the year, of course, this is my ask for money, is to consider making a donation to the President's Appeal through your federation under the Road to Equality. The links are all on the SI website and probably on your own site. All the funds go directly to support the projects, not the education, but the projects. We are just about to announce another project. We're just in the funding stage now in the next few days, and it will be a project from the very first speaker on the very first webinar, Kayanga Wasiki, and her project, the Lugari Community Center, where those girls are being educated against the lure of child marriage and FGM. And so we're quite excited about that project because it's truly right on the ground helping those girls. Also, the Soroptimist 6 activists are busy, as I was appalled to learn that Christmas is considered cutting season for FGM. And so it's a very, very busy time for them leading up to the holiday season. But right now, with girls out of school, it seems to be cutting season all year long. So it's a crazy thing. So I ask for your support for the appeal. And at this time, I want to mention one thing, and that is we have had a UN rep for a number of years who retired, named Catherine Mayer, and she tomorrow will be turning 100. So I want to recognize her. Soroptimist International has sent a certificate to her, and several of her club members will be greeting her through a balcony thing, I understand, to say hello and deliver the messages from us. So I don't know, there's been a few UN reps that have made it to that ripe old age, so maybe it bodes well. I always thought it was a stressful job, but anyway, so I have fond memories of Catherine from the times I've been in New York and lunched with her and whatnot. So she's about 3 feet tall and about 20 pounds, and her energy is never ending. So I wanted to say that. And on that note, I will close the recording for the webinar.